Next, 4 years after the Bucha massacre, that town in Ukraine is remembering its dead. When Russian military forces retreated from Bucha in 2022, hundreds of bodies were discovered, including those of women, children, and elderly people. Many of the corpses had been left lying in the street. A delegation of EU foreign ministers is in Kyiv to mark that anniversary today and to discuss ways to further support Ukraine. We're going to talk more about this now with our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert, who joins me on set. Doug, many people have heard the name Bucha. Just remind us a bit more about what allegedly happened there and where things stand on the justice front.
Yeah, it has become notoriously a household name for all the wrong reasons in the world, but it's easy to forget exactly what happened there 4 years later because so much has happened since then. Russian forces rolled into Bucha. It's northwest of the capital of Kyiv in the very early days right after its full-fledged invasion in February 2022. They stayed there for little over a month, and by the time they withdrew on March 30th, so they withdrew by March 31st today, they were already out. Like you said, they left behind a trail of massacre and devastation, according to the testimony of witnesses, material, empirical evidence gathered at the scene at the time. There were bodies with hands bound behind their backs. There were a lot of bodies with gunshot wounds at close range, corroborating the reports from residents that people in Bucha who were hiding, were shot, were taken by Russian forces who were occupying the town and shot at close range. There were signs of torture on these bodies. There were signs of rape on these bodies. The UN itself, the United Nations, chronicled more than around 70 summary executions, as they say. So executions mostly at close range, indiscriminate executions, let's be clear, by the occupying Russian forces. The Ukrainian authorities at the time basically said they left behind something like a scene from a horror movie by the time they had withdrawn. And this is something that the Ukrainian foreign minister has continued to talk about today. And European leaders at the time, this might sound familiar, condemned the atrocities, called for tougher sanctions against Moscow. I will just note that Russia continues to this day to deny any involvement, and they also say that this was stage managed by the regime in Kyiv for Western media consumption.
So, Doug, there is a meeting of foreign ministers who are there today in Kyiv, and they're going to be looking at justice for these alleged Russian war crimes. I mean, what specifically are they going to be looking at?
This tribunal is exactly as you say. It would be a special tribunal, and this is not the first time we've heard this. This idea has been floated around for years now, but it hasn't actually come to fruition yet because of the many obstacles. So you have basically 12 foreign ministers from EU countries, all there in Kyiv today, along with some lower-ranking officials, some transport ministers, some energy ministers are going to be present as well, and they're looking at just that. A broad tribunal whose specific location, where it would be based, is right now undecided. They just don't know. Maybe The Hague, where the International Criminal Court is currently based, but whose broad mandate would be to investigate and to adjudicate cases involving allegations of crimes of aggression, Russian crimes of aggression against Ukraine. But it's also a broad remit, you could argue, simply crimes of aggression. So you could sort of extended to say that if there were cases of Ukrainian crimes committed against Russians, those could perhaps also come under the remit of this tribunal. But let's be clear here. Let's not fall into the trap of false equivalency. International prosecutors, the lawyers, human rights organizations, democracy organizations, residents on the ground, the empirical evidence gathered have all been very clear that the brunt of all of these crimes of aggression, the so-called atrocities, and not just in Bucha, but in other towns and beyond, ongoing to this day, have been committed by occupying, invading Russian forces in Ukraine, on Ukrainian soil. So this is very beginning days. There are several countries that have already started to look at the issue, including Lithuania and Estonia. Germany, UK have expressed support for the idea, but they haven't said anything more public or more specific about it. So watch this space. This is still an idea in